Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gunnar. Welcome back. Today I want to talk a little bit about planting season. As we're pushing into early March here, we're going to be talking a little bit about switchgrass here today. As you can see behind me, I've got about a half acre of switch that I'm standing in. Now, this was a frost-seeded switchgrass field. This spring, it'll be 3 years old. This is a 3-year crop. Now, last year was a drought. As you can see, it's a little bit stunted, but we're looking at a pretty decent switchgrass stand. A lot of it's standing about 2-3 feet high, and it's really good and thick. But this year and the following year, we're gonna be expecting a huge jump in this switch. This was a fallow grass, just pasture field. It hadn't been grazed down for a few years prior. There wasn't a lot of fertilizer in here. It was mainly just a stagnant hayfield. It hadn't been cut, it hadn't been set back. There wasn't a lot of grazing happening on it, so it was pretty dormant. So we came in here, we did a light till on it. So 3 years ago, when we planted this, we frost seeded it. Now, frost seeding is an excellent way to establish a planting without a lot of the hassle of dealing with getting that seed at the correct depth and establishing it without worrying about a lot of weed competition off the get-go. So we came in here, we tilled this down late summer, let it green up, sprayed it, and then we went into dormant season into the fall where this ground froze up. It was pretty much bare dirt. There was a little bit of thatch on top because it's a grassy hayfield, so you're not going to get rid of all of that. But as the springtime came around, we've got a little bit of snow, the ground's frozen yet. Came in here with a broadcast spreader. It's 7 pounds per acre with their switchgrass. So we had about 3.5 pounds in here. And I came in here with a broadcast spreader and I spread this out and switch. Now, with that frost seeding, you're just letting it freeze and thaw, letting that seed work into your topsoil. That way, when spring rolls around, you're not worried about getting your seed buried. You don't have to drag this under. Switchgrass doesn't have to get real deep, but that freeze-thaw action with your frost seeding is a perfect way to get it just below that topsoil and then get it established. So now when your soil comes up to temperature for germination, you have proper and adequate moisture. You don't have to worry about getting moisture or getting rain to settle that seed into your topsoil. So I like frost seeding, but as you can see here, we're looking at a pretty decent stand now on year 3. Guys, what's going on? It's Gunnar. A lot of you have been reaching out saying you need more help. Well, I want to mention my habitat company, Hanson Habitat. If you want to take whitetails and wildlife to the next level on your own property, installing food plots, timber management, edge feathering, native habitat, fruit tree planting, whatever you need, bedding cover. I'm working with a team of the best land managers in the state of Wisconsin, and we'll do whatever you need to take your property to the next level. Shoot me a text message, 608-632-7233. We'll get you on the list. I'll help you with whatever you need. I got your back for life. Let's get back to the video. We dealt with some drought last year, so it set a lot of things back, but I'm pretty happy with this. And with switchgrass, it's a little different than planting like, say, a food plot. You're gonna see a pretty immediate growth take off. Now with switchgrass, you have to be patient. Anything with habitat and promoting wildlife habitat is going to be a time-consuming project. We're not gonna get an overnight result. That's the mindset that we don't wanna fall into, because then we're moving too quickly and we're overlooking, potentially drastic changes that we're making that are gonna have a negative impact down the road. So we don't wanna do that. We wanna understand that this is a time-consuming thing. We're looking at a multi-year plan here. We're trying to implement these things for the greater good without making costly mistakes. If you would have come in here and looked at this switchgrass a year ago, you would have said, what happened? What happened? That first year of growth was virtually nothing. That's the difficult thing. Switchgrass is pretty hard to identify when it's young, and if you have a lot of weed competition, it's even harder. But you have to be patient. Switchgrass is a very tough plant. It'll grow in a lot of different situations, and if you're just patient, you'll get a stand. Basically what we did to manage this field is we came in here and we mowed it when the weeds got up above that switchgrass, that young switchgrass. Like I said, it's hard to identify, but once you get the eye for it, you can see it. But what we did to manage this is we just came in here with the mower and we took the weeds off. We took the tops of those weeds off and we set them back. So we weren't going real low down to this switchgrass. We were just taking the tops of those weeds off and keeping those weeds from shading out that switch. So for the first 2 years, that's all we did. Now year 2, it came a little bit thicker. We could see a little bit more. You could see that we were gonna have something here, but we're still mowing that off because you don't have enough growth yet, especially in a pretty dormant, not nutrient rich field here that we've got. We're not gonna have a ton of growth, and we're not spreading any fertilizer on it. We're just letting it come naturally. So we were still mowing it off year 2, but towards the end of the summer of year 2, it's getting up towards where you can't raise the mower deck above that switchgrass. So that's when I'm gonna stop mowing. When I can't raise my deck high enough and I'm hitting that top of the switchgrass. That's when you wanna just let it overtake. Just let it go. It's established now, it'll go. So now year 3, with this year, with it being a drought year, it's not 4 or 5 feet tall, but at the same time, we've got a lot of excellent cover here. This is 3 feet tall in places, and this year I'm expecting it to be 4, 4.5, maybe 5 feet in places, because it's already established. It's above that weed line. Now we have a good moisture barrier with that old switch. When it dies off and then it re-sprouts in the springtime, you know, this is a perfect scenario for like a fawning situation in early spring here. A doe's gonna come in here and lay a fawn up and keep them out of that danger zone of predation. Now, this is another area where I've got switch edging running all the way up, and then on the inside of that switch edging, I've got a bramble layer. So now I have edge habitat all the way through here. Now I've got a bigger section of dense low brush cover with this switchgrass, about 1/2 acre. So I've got a good mixture of diversity here. I've got orchard trees coming up, I've got bramble layer, I've got switch edging, I've got a lot of native tree regeneration from the cuttings we've done in here, a lot of popple coming back, and then I've got this switch here. This is gonna be one of those things where in the next couple of years, maybe even this spring, I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna burn this. I'm gonna burn this thatch layer off to really spark that regeneration with that switchgrass. I've got another patch just across the field here that we burned last spring, and it 2x'd what it was doing prior to that, because there's something to be said about removing this thatch layer and putting all those nutrients right back into the soil and using that heat to promote brand new growth and get those switchgrass seeds and get that seed bank rolling again to get that stand even thicker and taller. So yeah, as we come into March here, you know, this is a perfect time to start frost seeding your switchgrass. You're coming in here when the ground's still frozen, it's getting up into the 50s during the daytime. You know, it's working in and out of that soil. It's going through something called stratification, where it's softening that seed so it can be ready for germination when your soil temps get warm enough and when your moisture level is adequate for germination. So frost seeding is also something I'm gonna be using for a lot of my rye plantings for the cover crops on my food plots here this spring. I'm gonna be going in, I'm gonna be just dumping a bunch of rye on my food plots, real heavy, get a real thick stand coming up so I can get my topsoil covered. I can protect it from the sun, that UV rays. It's not getting baked. The bacteria and the active matter in that topsoil is being protected, and I have that organic matter that I'm putting right back into the topsoil so I can come in once that rye is starting to mature. I'm gonna be broadcasting my summer blend into that and crimping that rye down. So I constantly have that cover crop on top of my soil. I'm protecting my soil, but I'm using frost seeding to do that. Now I already have that rye established from last fall's planting, that filling in that filler seed on my fall blends, but I'm reapplying that in the springtime to get a real good thick stand coming here this spring. So I have my topsoil covered, I'm adding organic matter. I'm not having to go in and disturb my soil with a tiller to control the weeds or go in with a chemical and spray that to keep my soil bare. I'm building my topsoil with that organic matter, and I'm coming in naturally with that crimper that's mimicking cattle or a big herbivore going in and knocking that crop back, setting that crop back with the hooves digging into that topsoil. I'm doing that with my crimper, I'm setting that back, I'm terminating that cover crop, then I'm going ahead and I'm planting my summer blend. So this is the perfect time of year to go in and start frost seeding some of your projects, your planting projects for the year. And this switchgrass stand is an excellent example of using that and creating a good crop in a matter of years. So when you're frost seeding, you want to remember you want to have your soil exposed so the seeds can work in and out of that topsoil and get established. And with that switchgrass, just let it go. Let it go, let it come. You can mow it back. I recommend using that mower on the first couple of years, clipping off those weeds up high, letting that switchgrass build its foundation. And then year 3, you're gonna have a nice stand coming just like I do here, real thick. And then on year 4 and 5, you're gonna have a big time jump. Now I've had switch stands that took off on year 3. This one's a little bit later, but it's still the same concept. You're managing it until it has enough strength. It's got that foundation laid where the weeds aren't going to overtake it. And then you're just managing and maintaining it to keep that stand healthy, keep it growing nicely, managing that thatch layer with some fire, some controlled burns. And you're gonna have great cover for those fawns in the early springtime, rabbits, squirrels, mice, birds, all sorts of wildlife with this excellent edge habitat that I've created here with this ½ acre of switch right on the edge of food, bordering that food, right on the edge of this hardwood timber. So I'm going hardwoods to soft screen with this switchgrass to food. I'm creating this diversity that these deer and all these wildlife are thriving on. And I'm creating a whitetail parcel that's easy to hunt, that produces results. Guys, it's Gunnar. Look, a lot of you guys have been talking to me, telling me how you need help. Well, I want to talk to you today about whitetail coaching. One-on-one virtual coaching with me. We'll go in depth on whatever problems, whatever help you need. We'll find the solution you're looking for. Shoot me a text, 608-632-7233. 608-632-7233. I got your back for life.